Okay, good morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, April 21st, 2022. This is the Podman Community Cabal meeting, where we generally talk about discussion kind of things surrounding Podman or even some of the other projects within the containers world here under the containers organization, I should say. And today I'll be taking notes in the HackMD, which I've put a link to in the chat. If you've not already signed in as an attendee there, please do so. If I misconstrue anything that you hear going on from the speakers today, please go ahead and correct me inside the HackMD or add stuff, especially if you have any links that you want to share during your talks. Today, we only have one topic right offhand, so I hope there's a fair amount of open discussion / questions at the end. And so we'll start off first with Brent on the Podman contribution methods discussion.
Actually, would you mind sharing that file that we started putting together?
Sorry, were you talking to me, Brent? Your voice broke for me.
Apologies. Yes.
Yeah.
Could you share the
Yep.
the doc there?
But I think only Red Hatters can access it. I'm not sure how to open that up.
And just share it on screen.
Oh, okay. Yep, I can do that. My bad. Yeah, I was not prepared to share my screen, but here you go.
Last time I did, my whole system went down. So
Can you see it?
Yes.
All right. Let me know if I need to make
it
bigger.
So I'll try to re-summarize what we would like to talk about here. And it's been a topic that's been on my mind, and I think it's been on other folks' mind, probably under different circumstances and with different reasonings. But what it kind of comes down to is that we now, as a team, my observation as a team is we are reaching sort of our critical mass in terms of being able to be reactive to pull requests, feature requests, bugs, and all of the stuff that comes along with having a popular project. And we're all working a ton of hours to try to keep up. And what's suffering is, to some degree, feature integration and the ability to be able to keep up with pull requests from internal and external in terms of the team. And I've just been kind of coming to the conclusion that if we don't alter our process or our approach, we will begin to really turn off our contributors as well as continue to be frustrated with our process of getting a PR merged, whether it would be CI, whether it would be you lose interest, whether it would be flakes, whether it would be code reviews. And so I began to kind of trickle this out with the Podman development team this week. And because we didn't have an open Cabal topic, we thought we'd also talk about this here and also try to get external input. And I see Anders is on here. I know that we have wrongly reviewed Anders stuff in terms of timeliness and other things. So perhaps he'll have some things to add. But it seems to me we need a process change. It seems to me that if we continue to act as we are today, which has been working, it will simply tire us out and not allow us to get to the stuff that we really want to do. And so I asked the team if they had seen alternative approaches, process changes, behavior changes, whatever, in their careers, in other places they've worked, that might be applicable here. And we really hadn't come up with anything, so we began to sort of look at what's out there. And so you see a list of things that we have thought might be good reading for the team. We've talked about a couple different things here and there, but what I would like to do today is hear from everyone. I would like to particularly hear from externals that do submissions to us. And I would like us to focus on what's not working and what a potential large change, a process change, something that's not a spot fix, although those also have their places. But I would like to really open the aperture and talk about what kind of approach may help us more long term. And with that, I will open up the conversation.
Well, I'll start off by saying that I do feel like we have there's a lot of value in code review. I am strongly against anything that would remove code review from the process entirely, because I, in particular, am a person that tends to identify structural issues with PR. I'm very focused on maintainability long term. And as such, I generally, when I review PRs, I'm looking at it with a mind to, is there something we can do differently that will make this easier to maintain in 6 months, in a year? And I think that I won't say I do it as often as I used to. Back in the early days, I was a real stickler about this, but I still do identify many PRs that require significant changes to basically match what I would say is maintainable. And those PRs passed tests. Those PRs passed review from other people. So I think there's still value in having a subset of the team, especially experienced maintainers, review PRs before they go into master, or main rather. That said, I do also recognize what Brent is saying, because at this very moment, I have 68 unread GitHub emails, all from the Podman repo, and a sizable number of them probably require code reviews. I know that I was only midway through a review of Paul's latest Etsy host stuff before it actually merged. So I don't really have a suggestion here beyond increasing automation and focusing on linting, especially to try and catch as much low-hanging fruit as we can. But I recognize there's a problem. I'm against fixing it in a way that would completely remove code review and just ship things straight into the main branch.
So thanks, Matt. I think that Matt's comments come because he's heard two versions of this, and he's kind of come to a conclusion on what he'd like, and he's right. On the other hand, I know Matt does a lot of the code reviews, and I'll ask Matt, knowing the answer. Matt, would you like to be the only code reviewer on the team?
Oh, absolutely not. Nothing would get
Okay.
merged.
And how many times have you begged the team to do more code reviews?
It seems like it's like a bi-yearly thing. Once every 6 months, I just ask, can more people do this, please? And it works for a while, but not forever.
Right. Because why do you think that is?
Not enough developers, too many PRs, not enough maintainers, not enough developers. Too many developers, not enough maintainers, I would say, is one of the core problems. But also the complexity of changes and the degree of really the Podman itself keeps growing. The amount of code in the project keeps growing. It's much more difficult now to be a domain expert in every part of Podman than it was 2 years ago. And that means that I can look at something in, say, the HTTP API, and I'm not really going to be able to review that well, which means that I have to bring in someone who is an expert on that part of the project. And even then, it also increases the amount of time it takes to make these reviews, because back like 2 years ago, I knew basically every part of the project. I could easily say, I know what this change is going to do. I know what the impacts are going to be. Now I have to actually look. So the increasing scope and complexity combined with the basically static amount of maintainers. We brought on Paul, which is awesome. Paul's very, very great. But aside from that, we haven't really increased the number of people who are maintainers.
So it's the goal. I sense two things. The one thing is to make it easier to contribute, so for contributors, and the other thing is to make our lives easier.
They don't have to be separate.
I think they do, because they serve different goals. So when looking at what the Linux community does, they're very explicit in shifting work from maintainers to contributors. It is intentionally hard or more complex contributing to the Linux kernel than to other projects, because the maintainers are overloaded. So they decided to have rigorous checks, and if the patches don't pass, then they may not be reviewed. If they don't pass style checks, they may not be reviewed, but there will be bots who comment, in order to get this in, you're going to pass these tests. But it's up to the contributors to do this work. So they do not need to be necessarily different, but they can be different. One other thing I find worth looking at is how big is the problem for Podman. So it's just checking at Docker or Moby, they have 4,000 open issues and 281 open pull requests. And Containerd has 292 issues and 94 pull requests. And I'm not surprised by these numbers, at least based on the past 2 years, where we looked at the end of the 2 years at the statistics. The Podman project had way much more traffic, way more issues, way more pull requests. So I'm under the impression that, at least in comparison to comparable projects of similar sizes, we're doing pretty good. But don't get me wrong, I'm not wanting to say that this is not a problem. Just wanted to look at it in a way that how big is it, at least in comparison to others. Maybe we reached a level where we just can't serve all issues. At least for open pull requests, I find Podman is doing pretty okay. Containers image, for instance, I was joking that there's 1.25 people. The one person is Miloslav, and the quarter is me, and I think we're around 60 pull requests. Just there's only so much time we can spare, and some things just won't get done due to the time. But I'm pretty sure that if we would merge them faster, the quality may suffer considerably.
Yeah, and I want to reinforce, before I call on Miter here, I want to reinforce that I'm not saying we haven't done a good job. My concern is for the future. Well, it's for now and the future. I think we do have a fairly rigorous this and a fairly rigorous that, which I might claim is perhaps one of the contributing factors to making this difficult. On the other hand, we feel safer with having lots of rigor. But by no means am I saying what we've set up is wrong or anything along those lines. But Miloslav, please.
Yeah, I feel a bit uneasy with taking the kernel examples, because the kernel is such a prestigious project that it can just afford to discourage contributors or to set a very high bar. On the other hand, one thing that here in Math we might consider is to actually delegate areas of responsibility and have tooling that assigns the right reviewers to the right PRs so that experts can do that. I don't know whether Podman can be sliced like that practically. But
Sort of. I mean,
ultimately,
we do have people who are experts.
from outside of our little bubble to see whether we are doing a good enough job.
I think we do that via humans. We don't have a way of doing it via software. So there's obviously experts, and if there's a networking issue, I usually ping Paul. If it's an internal database issue, it goes to Matt. If there's a API issue, I send it to John. Containers image type pulls, and it goes to you or Valentin. So there's any low level stuff, C groups, Giuseppe gets it. So we do a lot of that. And comparing it to the kernel breaks it down. Similarly, we just don't have, sort of a bubble up approach like the kernel does.
That would shave half a day from many PRs, and it would decrease the traffic for load on the main maintainers.
The other thing that the kernel has got going for it is it's very modular, right? So one suggestion could be to just look at Podman as being kind of too monolithic at this point. Maybe it needs to be decomposed into smaller pieces, where the smaller pieces are easier to test, changes are easier to review, and then Podman itself kind of becomes that's when we put all the pieces together and actually run the big tests and or the lengthy tests before the pieces the assembly gets committed into main, for example.
Yeah.
So much more emphasis on unit testing small pieces of Podman before they get accumulated into a main merge.
Well, and there was also subsystem branches that developed completely separately and are merged only by tooling. And that might be way too much tuning for our scale. We are not that large.
Go Valentin.
A question for Matt. Matt, do you feel that reviewing or that your life was easier after you did reminders?
Yes, definitely. Especially not really the code review reminders, but the please assist me in triaging issues reminders are always very helpful, because like 80% of my traffic usually is issues. And nowadays I get in and I review them, and I find that you or Paul or someone else has probably gotten to at least half of them. And those I can just skim and I can archive. The ones that haven't been triaged yet are the ones that actually take time, attention, concentration. Those are the hard ones. So yes, it definitely does get easier, but I would also say that it's stayed easier, at least there. Asking for other people to assist in triaging issues has been a massive assistance to me, and it's something that I haven't had to remind people again since I don't even know the last time I did it.
That's interesting, because I'm trying to understand or trying to reflect on the problem a little bit more. So could it be that we're not getting to answer the issues, or that we're at some point unresponsive to the issues or unresponsive in pull requests? Because they could be two different things. Both relate to scaling. The one is probably can be solved by headcount, and the other one by somebody regularly whipping whipping our bottoms and trying to, like a shepherd trying to get the herd back. Because so many people are working on so many different things, it's very, very easy to get, or for things to fall off the radar.
Personally, I would definitely say it's things falling off the radar. We're really good at initial triage, at asking people for more details and trying to get to the bottom of issues. But the moment things start to get hard, when an issue starts to, well, basically we've identified this is an issue with Podman attach where it stopped working after some number of kilobytes are transferred in a short period of time. That, I think, is when issues fall off the radar, because that's when it will take me or some other senior maintainer several hours to root cause and figure out exactly what's going on. And once you hit that cliff where either it requires a lot of time to review and identify what needs to be done next, or if it's a code review, anything over 1,000 lines, I'd say, no, actually, anything over 500 lines. The moment it hits 500 lines is the moment I think that it takes a lot longer to review, unless someone is actively pinging everyone every other hour to get the code review done. It's not going to happen because it just takes so much longer to review large PRs than it does small ones.
I mean, at some margin, we just have to not do something. We are just talking about what we are going to stop doing.
Mohan
Mohan
has his. Yeah, I was gonna say he has his hand up. Go ahead.
Just wondering, like, obviously I don't know the entire developer workflow here. I'm just wondering if automatic triaging might help, as in like SCI runs and checks what is this PR about, and automatically tries to tag it with like a networking thing or maybe some other aspects, and that will help reduce the initial triage. And also maybe have CI say like if it fails linting, and automatically say that, okay, this is not code review ready yet, fix the linting first, or something like that. Or add contributor guide where it says like you are making a PR, whether it's a bug fix, mention it's a bug fix, or a feature change, mention it a feature change, or bug fixing with specific aspects, tag it with those specific aspects. That might help in the initial triaging.
I think that sounds good. The problem here is I think there's two types. There's code developers who are open a pull request, and then there's we have a lot of drive-by people who just want to fix something. They're going to open up a pull request, and they're not going to necessarily hang around to see it through fruition. And if we make it too painful, they're just going to disappear. So if someone comes in and just fixes a man page or fixes a spelling mistake, and we have all this bureaucracy in front of them, it's
I understand. Maybe we should, other than the contributor guide that I just mentioned, maybe automatic triaging might help. They don't have to do anything. The CI will tag the PRs and issues with the appropriate tags as far as it can say.
Does anybody that's external to Red Hat have any comments they want to talk about this?
Yeah, well, in the Minikube project, we tried like weekly triage meetings. So everyone joins from the team and divides up untriaged or otherwise pending PRs according to a web application that one of the developers wrote. I forget if it's called Triage Party or Tea Party, but it's available for GitHub projects. And so it turns into something of a game where it divides the pending issues between the players, and then you divide the tool up. So there could be something to investigate. But unfortunately, it's also subject to this Cliff mentioned. It helps with the initial triaging, but sometimes the issues get stuck after being classified as a bug or feature, and then like nothing happens anyway. So it does help with the initial like first level support thingy, but it doesn't really help to get the issues solved faster, except for maybe maintainers and developers having better sorting and tagging of incoming issues. But that could be one thing to experiment with.
Andrews, if you could drop links to that project, I didn't quite hear.
Yeah, sure. It's available from the Minikube community page, but I can drop a link to the project itself.
Thank you.
I asked Arashi to display this just as something that actually she found the article, but it kind of struck me today, which was these statistics on the study of pull requests and amount of time, quote unquote, wasted. And they sort of justify what waste means. But I thought that was, I would think that most of us would say, hey, I got something in 6 days. That's normally pretty good. And yet if you look at it, you look at how much time is sort of lost in that, even when we're managing multiple projects. So the answer is not always there. And I can't remember if it's this article or another one, Rashi, perhaps you'll remember, but they talk about the compounding problems of course, merge requests that have to be rebased, and a person's ability to go back to 10 days ago and be able to do that rebase properly, and the amount of time that some rebases can take. Whereas if the cadence is quicker, it drastically reduces those scenarios. I just, again, sort of sharing a different paradox on what we do and what I think where the industry is trying to trend.
Well, let me push against that a bit. One part is that I think that making PRs that are easy to rebase is a skill. Basically, just use many small commits and it gets much easier. And I think that article also says that if you return to a PR after a few days, you forget about why you did it that way and lose context. That to me is kind of a smell like the PR should be maintainable in a sense that if we return to it 6 months later, we can still figure out what the code does. So if the original contributor can't remember after a week, that's a sign that the PR needs to be improved.
I'm not sure I can get totally on board there. I recognize some of it, but I don't remember stuff I did on Monday for sure. For whatever reason, my brain cache gets flushed, and I don't remember why I did things other than rereading the commit message. But
that's what I mean, basically.
Yeah.
Probably, I'm pretty sure the truth lies somewhere in between.
Of course.
There's also I think also not only writing a PR is a skill, but also reviewing.
Yes.
I have to look up the tweet. It was a colleague, like a Java guru at Red Hat, who came up with a pyramid of code reviews, and style things and typos are at the top, which means they really shouldn't matter. So where I'm pointing at is maybe we can get faster also at reviewing things, and maybe clean up certain things that would otherwise just slow down everything. You know, if we need to get something merged and there's a typo or just a style issue, we merge it and we can clean it up afterwards. But it certainly depends on how many Fs we want to give or not to give on certain things. I think it's hard. Software engineering is hard. That's for sure. But just to iterate, those are things that tooling cannot help with. I think this depends on each and every developer or contributor, writer, and the reading part as well.
Flavian, please.
Hey, thank you. So maybe I spaced out while it happened, but have you all defined the problems and like basically the hinders that you face when getting through your PR review backlog? Like, what are we tackling here? Because I see a lot of discussion about very valid points, and I'm just a bit lost, I guess.
That's a very fair comment, and some of that you can pin on me, because with this team, if I start saying specifics, then they start dealing with how to fix them rather than talking about it, and then we go off the rails. So, but in general, if I were to be more specific, I think that the team wishes we could probably, number one, work on feature work more often, and we just don't have time. Number two, I think we wish that we had better time to do code reviews, and we wish that we all jumped on the PRs and did the same high quality code review. I think that wish is hopeless, but it's a wish. We do have, whenever a new something comes out that's big with Podman, for example, the machine stuff, we tend to get an extreme peak of bugs and kind of a constant channel of feedback, which takes 2 or 3 of us out of the whole game. And I think that we wish we could adapt and deal with that bigger. And I think what really rips our heart out, believe it or not, is when we see that we've missed somebody's PR and they've done everything right and we've missed them for weeks, and all of us walk away from that actually fairly pissed off that we let somebody down. So, I mean, all of these are single things. The amount of time that is spent running what is currently our CI for submissions is extraordinary. I mean, we're not quite to whatever Cryo is doing, but we do a lot, and we do a lot regardless if it's a 1-line change or a 5,000 line change. And I would also say, if the team would take this the right way, I think this particular team has a habit of holding back all their work till it's perfect, and then submitting large PRs that went well past scope, well past intentions, and now creates a whole bunch of stuff we got to go look at. We're all guilty of that, I believe. And so you look at some of the more modern approaches, and they might tell you that some of that can be avoided with more frequent PRs, smaller bits of work. But to date, we haven't found a way for those with that habit to help them get over that. Anyone want to add others? I mean, those are just off the top of my head some of the things that we struggle. We do a lot right, so guys, I don't want anyone to take it the wrong way.
I mean, I think hearing from the contributors what we are doing wrong would be the most valuable part. I
Of
don't
course.
think we necessarily know.
I think we're all. I also think we're sort of conflating two different issues here. One is
Indeed.
handling issues, and we have probably about once a month or once every 6 weeks we do what we call a bug week, because we have an internal rule that says we can't have more than 200 issues on Podman open at one time. And as soon as we go over the 200, we start putting pressure on ourselves to try to close down issues. And that, even if we spend a week and a half doing that with the whole team just concentrating on it, we're lucky to get it down to 180. And usually once we stop, within a week or so, it's back over 200. I think it's like 215 this morning or something. And so that you almost have a feeling of a treadmill there. On the other side, sort of what we've been talking about is someone actually opens up a pull request, and then everybody's too busy doing their own efforts to, review that pull request in a timely manner.
Dan, those two go hand. I mean, they are conflated, but on the other hand, if you think about a bug week and we start throwing 20 PRs at our process, we actually create a tornado where we just, a spinning treadmill, if you will, where we really complicate or compound some of the issues that we have. So others have raised hands. Chris?
So as far as the CI automation goes, and I've said this before, and I think we got slapped on the back of the hand a little bit recently with the that grad student review, is that we have far too few unit tests and way too many integration and system tests. And I think, I've kind of always maintained about 45 minutes really is kind of seems to be kind of the, maximum of productivity, if you will, where, if your CI runs are taking longer than if they're taking 45 minutes, you're really kind of pushing it in terms of patience and, not kind of maintaining interest and maintaining velocity of PRs, right? If we could have CI finish in, 15 minutes, for example, right, then, when you're in the review process and somebody points out some small little, tweak that needs to be changed or whatever, right? You're not waiting another 45 minutes. Okay, well, I got to wait for the test to run again. Let me go do the dishes and come back and see, oh crap, I forgot a semicolon, right? Where if that cycle time is faster, it allows the PRs and the reviews and the whole that whole train to move down the tracks faster. And I think a key way to do that is with leaning more heavily on unit level testing, just because it's so much more efficient at that level. Unit tests run orders of magnitude faster than integration tests, and just the same as we should have integration tests that run faster than the system tests. It's supposed to be a pyramid in an ideal world.
So John, this is where you speak up and you tell us all about how Golang sucks for mocking unit test environments.
I didn't say it was easy.
But set the record straight, John.
So, having come from a background with strong unit tests, Golang has some serious mocking challenges. I've tried using, like their test FS to.
Does everyone know what mock means? The way he's using it? Okay.
But I've also tried to use it for, like they're trying. they're getting there, but it's not as robust as if you come from a, like a Java, Scala, or even a Python background, where you can mock out the whole file system and really control what you're trying to test in a unit test. And that's the reason we do push a lot of stuff into the integration and end-to-end, is that once you're reaching out to the file system, you're really not a unit test anymore, because you're changing things that you're changing the context. You don't have tight control over that. Now, could we get better at this? Yes, there's a lot of times we have end-to-end tests that we've never really done an audit. I'll put it that way, to say which one, where do we have duplication in those tests?
Well,
and
I
even, Valentin can step in on this one. I mean, we've tried now for 2-3 years to get a coverage tool that even Tom started it, I think. And the Golang coverage tools, unless somebody has a really good one, produce way more output, and they collapse under the weight of Podman.
So I think, maybe this is more plus ones to an approach, a more modular approach. If we have to rely on integration tests, maybe Podman just needs to be busted up into way finer, granular pieces.
Chris, that's getting onto the area of come take my guns.
Well,
Because I think we struggled. I mean, the vendor dances in Go are probably one of our most self-inflicted work time sucker uppers.
Yeah.
I know Valentin loves to do them. He has his hand up.
I think it's easy to blame the tooling, and maybe some of it's deserved, maybe a lot of it's deserved, but I think there's the current CI setup that we have is it seems to me like pretty close. It's pretty close to kind of the best it's going to get, right? Like, we're not going to really it's going to take a lot of effort to make what we have run faster without changing other stuff, like being more intelligent with what tests we run and stuff like that. So I think that's where we need to go, is towards the changing other stuff.
Are you also running your tests in VMs instead of containers?
We are.
Yes.
Because I always found that funny that the Kubernetes tests are being run in virtual machines. So they're not really eating their own dog food, are they, if they're spinning it?
We do run containerized tests, but it's not super valuable. It's not a big focus on it. I think
I guess it would be more interesting if there were more unit tests or stuff that didn't require more setup.
Yeah, and certainly like the unit tests, you can definitely, that's definitely something that can run in containers. And I think, really it's kind of more of what we're doing here, right? I mean, Podman has got its fingers, pretty into some pretty low level stuff, right? I mean, almost into the kernel. And so you really can't test that kind of stuff within containers without really disturbing the host system in ways that make testing more difficult.
I think in the projects I was involved with, it was more of an availability thing. So the available CI systems were using virtual machines, and Travis was the last one using containers, I think I remember using myself. So, and they went over to virtual machines to make it more I don't know, bug compatible with the setups people were doing.
Valentin has his hands up. I'm just going to do a time check that we've got about 10 more minutes left before we're going to need to wrap up.
Thanks, Tom. I also wanted to do a time check. I just want to make it quick. So I think the study that came out regarding unit tests and coverage, they were only checking the coverage of unit tests. And Podman as a system tool is inherently hard to unit test because we need to run everything. We're manipulating the kernel. We can't just throw data and memory around in many cases. And parts of our stack is quite well, or has quite extensive unit tests. So certain packages in containers image and common have very rigorous unit tests. But I would like to, or at least try to come up with some action items, because now we were focusing on CI, which is, I think, is part of, let's say, the turnaround time for a single PR. And I think we all agree that there's many things we can improve and probably should improve. But I think we need to isolate certain things that we want to explore. But I doubt that we will, or I think we will need more meetings to change the overall process. And I think we owe Brent some more meetings on that, and probably some more thinking, because I'm pretty sure that Brent has put quite some thought into it. But things like, or improving CI is probably a low-hanging fruit when comparing it to changing the overall process. At least that's my gut feeling, an uninformed one. But this seems like something easy to do. And if the pain, I think this is a long-standing pain, improving CI speed, and it's something we can prioritize, or hopefully can prioritize. And for the process, I'm not sure. I guess we need some more meetings on that, and read through the articles and isolate the pain points that we have. I just wanted to bring the conversation back to the initial topic, not to get lost in speeding up CI.
Thank you for that.
I just wanted to quickly show one thing that I also saw in an article. So basically here they did a study where they asked people, like, what was the motivation behind doing code reviews? And the main reason was to find defects. But then when they looked at all the reviews that happened, they noticed that there was much more going on in the reviews apart from just finding defects in the code. So I think maybe one more thing that we can probably think about is come to a consensus on what we're actually looking for when we're doing code reviews. Is it just effects, or is it like, are we trying to improve the code, or, just like, so that can also probably help reduce how much time it takes to do a code review if you're not looking for every single thing, basically.
We also have a set of things we do on the left-hand side that's not being shown there, that we should never have, which is designing. We often, particularly with interns, give them something to do, and then they take a shot at it, and then we tell them what they should have really done. So we probably have to. That's an area of improvement that I'm keen on as well. Having debates on PRs drives me crazy.
I think I want to, on that regard, I think we have done that quite a bit in the past. Starting something, getting someone started on a PR, and then especially on interns. But I think that has been improving. And I think Valentin has done a really good job of mentoring junior engineers to be starting at design phase and having those design discussions. And I think that is definitely, I've seen in the last 3 years that I've been with the team, the improvement that is that team has made on that.
there are certainly exceptions to this rule, Preeti. But thanks. I think the last one that Brent was referring to was Nile, which looked like a quick and easy one, and then it exploded into something. Oh dang! Customers urgently need it, and it's it's factors more complex than we initially thought.
Yeah.
But I think that's a fair point also, because I think we come to a point where probably we can improve everywhere a little bit. There's so many aspects of, and so many facets of just writing and delivering software and packaging up, reviewing, and all these kinds of things. But I think we need to look at them in isolation, probably, in order to understand what we can improve.
So as a means to getting to an end here, because I can see the animals are starting to bare their teeth for lunch. If everyone could take a shot at looking at the collections of articles, and maybe what we need to do is somehow make that public so that our external people can look at it, Tom. I don't know if that's just Podman.io or what, but we don't. I was hoping as such. We don't have answers today, and I was hoping as such. And I don't really want us working on this every day, but I would like to come back to this, and I would like people to go out and read some of the, I hate to use the word modern, but some of the new approaches to, specifically to code contributions, and what they've been able to reap as a benefit and what they did to get there. So, and then we can kind of come back to this. And what I'm really hoping is everyone agrees that there's, I guess, to some degree, that we agree that there's a looming problem out there, and some of us have it more now, and we will all have it later, should this project keep going.
Well, I think also that this is something that's good to fix early. Once we're into the thick of it, it's going to be a lot harder.
Brent, would you paste this on a mailing list? I was just thinking on how we can continue the conversation so that everybody has the time to think things through, and I think a mail thread may be a good means for that.
I would rather not have it in a mail thread, but I would suggest putting in discussion on Podman.
Okay, that is a good way to debate on it. Yeah,
potentially, or something where people can all get in on it and hack at it without.
Perhaps we'll get more external input as well.
Yeah.
Discussion on GitHub? Okay.
Yeah. Podman. Yeah, under Podman.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and then doing an email blast to the list saying, "Hey, this new discussion started up," in case you didn't see it.
As long as it supports threads, I think this is something the conversation may need.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the conversation time anyways. Thank you. I'll back to Tom.
Okay, thanks, Brent. It was a great discussion, great thoughts, and I think the biggest thing to solving a problem is first recognizing that you do have a problem, and I think that's where we're getting to right now. So with that, we only have a few minutes left. I just want to open it up real quickly and see if anybody had any particular questions or comments that they wanted to address before we close out.
For those that were looking for a 403 FCOS image, I have created them, and I'm just looking for folks to test them, Dan Walsh, so that we can have some before I flip the switch and they start consuming it. It works for me, but I keep my Mac only for just testing, so it's pretty plain.
If you could get me some info on that, Brent, I could blast it out on Twitter. We might get some response that way too.
Okay.
If
I
you
mean, I
want to
think
go
if Ashley and
one
Dan
more.
test it, that's 3. That's enough for me to release it. Do you agree, Dan? We
Yep.
just want to make sure the darn thing boots and does a few basic commands.
Yep. Send me a link on how to test it.
It's in GChat.
Okay.
You just Podman machine init -- image - path followed by the URL
All right.
-- now.
Ready.
Okay.
Unless there's anything else, giving it one last chance.
I think the only other thing we'd be announcing is we're going to have release candidate for Podman 4.1 in the next couple of days, right, Matt?
I was planning on doing it after lunch, so yes.
Excellent.
So everybody, as soon as you can get release candidate 1, if you can try it out and test it, hopefully it'll be released in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Given that, I'm not hearing any other questions. I'll just note that our next meeting is on Thursday, May 16th for the Cabal meeting, and the next community meeting is Tuesday, June 7th. Both of them are currently at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so at the same time slot as we had today. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming today and for all the great discussion that we had. So with that, I'm going to stop
Thanks,
the recording.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.